hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, and that is the character crisis that we face in much of the world. It is affecting so much of our lives these days, is responsible for the breakdown of relationships, the breakdown of many of our most treasured institutions, and also the breakdown of the fabric of our free society. And I consider that a tragedy because, as the opening theme song for our program points out, freedom and character are interdependent. They're completely intertwined with one another, because without character, without people of solid character, the country cannot have the kind of character that will enable it to sustain maximum liberty for all of its citizens. When we are basically good and decent people, we just need government to get out of our way and let us prosper, let us do things, let us innovate, let us try and make our way, and in the process make things better for everyone. But when we don't have a sound moral compass, and we don't behave with the common good in mind, and we take advantage of one another, and we abuse one another, and we exploit one another, and we disrespect one another, and so on and so on. When we do those kinds of things, then government is constantly invited to micromanage our lives, and that always means a restriction of freedom. Every law that is passed, every regulation, every effort that's made by our legislators to try and control us only ends up restricting our freedom. And a certain amount of that, of course, is inevitable and necessary, I suppose. But what has always made this country great is that we have been able to enjoy the maximum degree of freedom. And in a free society, people tend to prosper like in no other way. And that's why it's our duty. It's our duty to restore the character of our great land, and we do that one heart and mind at a time. We have to be the best we can be individually, and that's how we become the best we can be collectively. And that's how we preserve our freedom. It's all interrelated, it's all interdependent, freedom and character. And that's why at the beginning of this program you hear that patriotic song that my wife and I composed back in 1999 and that gained some popularity after the tragic attacks of 9/11 in 2001. But the purpose of the song and the purpose of its message is to make a personal appeal to each and every individual that we have a duty. Each one of us has a duty to uphold our country's best ideals. And to do that, we must be the kind of people that we can be. And I've devoted perhaps the last 25 years of my professional career as a psychologist to helping people develop their character and also helping those who've been in relationships with people of lackluster or disturbed character, impaired character, and who have felt the weight of that. And I blog about that, and I've written books about that, which you can buy online or at your local bookstore. In Sheep's Clothing, the international bestseller on understanding and dealing with manipulative people. My first and longest running bestseller, now in many foreign languages. I think we're about ready to ink a deal with the Czech Republic. It will be just another of the many foreign publications of In Sheep's Clothing. And my other book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, another bestseller. A more in-depth study of the defining issue of our time, the various disturbed characters out there, how to spot them, how to deal with them, what to look for when trying to get help, what the kind of therapy looks like that actually can provide some help. I've said many times on this program, and I've written many articles on this topic. Unfortunately, the character crisis that we face is not tailor-made for the kinds of therapies that were developed many years ago. Therapies primarily designed to treat individuals who were overly hung up, overly anxious, insecure, riddled with fears and insecurities. The various talk therapies, insight-oriented therapies, they're very good for helping people overcome their insecurities and their unconscious fears and gain insight into the nature of their problems. But they were never designed, the therapies that we traditionally have had were never designed to deal with the kinds of character problems that we face so common today. So unfortunately, when we tell people that they really need therapy because we recognize that their character is impaired, unfortunately, just saying that they need therapy doesn't really mean very much, inasmuch as the kind of therapy that's available today is rarely up to the task of dealing with the problem that we face. And so that's why I've been blogging on my blog at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com, about the kind of therapy that works best, not just with individuals who have character impairments and who need to make improvements in their character to further develop their character, but also the kind of therapy that works best for folks who have been in traumatic relationships with disturbed characters and have been scarred by those relationships, and who may have vulnerabilities of their own in their own character that predispose them make them more than average vulnerable to those unsavory characters out there who might well abuse and or exploit them. So I have a series of articles going on the blog this past couple of weeks, and the latest one is a primer. The latest series is a primer on cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a series designed to help folks understand what kind of therapy works best for individuals of impaired character, and also individuals who've been in relationships with folks of unsavory character. And the first article was titled "A Primer on Cognitive Behavioral Therapy," and the article I posted last Friday, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy Primer Part 2, is a continuation of the series. There'll be 3 or 4 articles in this series, at least one more, more than likely 2. And I give examples of what the kind of therapy looks like that works best in these kinds of cases. And if you have a question about anything in the articles, or you just have a question in general, maybe you've been in a relationship with a character impaired individual, maybe it's left you reeling in one way or another, maybe you're looking for some answers, maybe you just have something you want to share with the listening audience, maybe you just want to ask a question or two. Whatever the case may be, we welcome you to give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. We're live tonight, able to take your calls, and happy to take your call. I wanted to talk a little bit about several things in the news, and then I wanted to also talk about the series of articles that's on the blog at manipulative-people.com. I also write for another blog, counselingresource.com. That's counseling with 2 L's, www.counseling.resource.com. The blog is titled Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life. And it's based in the UK, and I write an article a week for that blog as well. And then, as I mentioned, my own blog at www.manipulative-people.com. And I mentioned my 2 books, In Sheep's Clothing and Character Disturbance, and I also have a book for the Christian faith community called The Judas Syndrome. It's about the power of faith to truly transform a person's life. So if you have a question you want to ask, or a comment you want to make, or a contribution you'd like to make to the program, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm happy to take your call. Well, a couple of announcements. There's going to be a webinar in September. It's going to be a 4 to 6 hour webinar. Right now it's looking more like a 4-hour webinar, but it could develop into something more. We have a lot of people already signing up, expressing interest for it. Formal registration will begin in just a few weeks. Advanced registration will begin. So I'll have more to say on it in the coming weeks. But this will be a webinar on understanding the very nature of character disturbance, how to deal with a character-impaired person in your life, how to be on the lookout for warning signs that you might be dealing with a person who's got significant character issues and is likely to make your life miserable. And most especially we're going to talk about what to look for when you go looking for help. This is a highly specialized field. I get calls every day from individuals seeking advice on how to either deal with someone in their life who's driving them a bit crazy. You know, we have a saying in the field, in the mental health field, that there really are two basic kinds of problems that people have when they come to see a shrink, so to speak. Um, One set of problems has to do with what we call the various neuroses. Neurotic individuals are individuals whose fears and insecurities and hang-ups and worries are literally making them sick. They're literally sick with fret. Their anxieties have overwhelmed them, and they're making themselves sick. These are individuals that we help with traditional insight-oriented therapies. But we also see a fair number of people these days, an increasing number of people these days, who are not making themselves sick so much as they're making everybody around them crazy. They're making everybody around them crazy because of the way they behave, because of the things they do that are abusive and or exploitive. It's the way they conduct themselves, the way they prefer to relate to people in their lives, with a sense of entitlement, impulsively, without much conscience, at least not with a sufficient conscience to hold themselves back when they think about doing something unthinkable. You know, I've counseled many folks who, of course, it's pretty typical that they will reach out for professional help when things have already gotten pretty bad. And really, you know, most of the time that's too late. But they'll reach out when things have gotten pretty bad. And they'll tell me their stories. And one of the things that's truly amazing to me is what kinds of boundaries folks are willing to cross these days with increasing frequency. It's alarming, really, to me. For example, in a relationship, I mean, it's natural for everyone to experience some degree of discord. No relationship is heaven. No relationship is perfect. We are human beings. No relationship is smooth sailing every day of the week. We're bound to have our bumps in the road. We're bound to have our differences. We're bound to have quarrels with one another. But there are certain unspoken, used to be generally accepted rules for having civil debate, for having a principled argument, for speaking your piece, but with certain degree of civility. And when I hear people tell me what kinds of things that they have said to their spouse or significant other, or done, or allowed to happen, or I witness these things in purpose. I have many couples that I've seen in my office give me a first-hand snapshot of the kind of ways they go at it with one another. And it's not so much that people have conflict. People have always had conflict. And it's not abnormal to argue, and it's not abnormal to vent a little bit from time to time. But as I said, there used to be certain unspoken and generally well-observed rules for civil debate, for civil discourse. And in our character-impaired age, one of the hallmarks is that people transgress certain boundaries And it isn't so much that they transgress these boundaries. It's that they do it with so little compunction, with such great ease, without thinking much about it. And yes, they may feel a certain amount of regret afterward, some practical regret. Maybe they realize that they've done some damage. But that doesn't seem to stop them from doing it again. And that's the hallmark of character disturbance. That's the hallmark of character disturbance. That's what we're dealing with these days. And I see it in relationships all the time. It's why we have people marrying 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times and still not getting it right. And having kids all over the place and having kids being torn between. It's what's happened to us. And there's a vicious circle that's taken place, too. Because we have allowed this to happen, we've allowed ourselves to develop so poorly in character, we have created a cultural climate of permissiveness and moral relativism and entitlement. And this permissive, morally relativistic, entitled culture of ours has further enabled character disturbance. It's a vicious circle. When we have enough people of impaired character in a country, we get a pretty eroded, pretty decadent culture. And that decadent culture, in turn, reinforces, enables, and even promotes more character disturbance. It's a vicious cycle that's gotten out of control, that's spiraled well out of control, and has done damage to the fabric of our society. It's done great damage. And we look to certain people to save us. There's already talk about the next election, the next federal election. Hillary Clinton announced today without much fanfare that she's running again. And all the folks who think that she will be a champion of their cause will be lining up. I've heard estimates of upwards of $1 billion, maybe more, maybe $1.5 billion, maybe $2 billion to run this campaign for the presidency. This is not what our founders had in mind, folks. They're rolling over in our graves right now. Nobody would have imagined this. We were supposed to be a people capable of managing our own affairs with very, very little input or restraint or meddling in our lives from government. That's what we were supposed to be. We were supposed to be people not only of faith, and if anyone doubts that, all they have to do is read any of the initial papers that we still have, any of the documents, early documents of the founders. Now, I'm not promoting one faith over another. It's not what I'm doing. There are many paths, I believe, many paths, even non-formal religious paths, There are many very decent guiding life philosophies that, if properly adhered to, can really promote decency and character in human beings. That's why these systems of belief and systems of practice have endured for so many years. But people who live true to their creeds and who are of decent and honorable character and who take their civic duties and their obligations seriously and work hard, not just to prosper themselves, but for the greater good. These people are the backbone of our society, and when we have enough of them, we don't really need anybody else micromanaging our lives. We don't need hundreds of millions of rules on the books, filling libraries, volume after volume after volume. We wouldn't need them. This is how it was supposed to work. This was what was envisioned. And as far as civil service was concerned, what was thought to be the idea is that people who had demonstrated a high degree of awareness and success, not only at managing their own lives, but in bringing prosperity to the rest of society, those not necessarily movers or shakers, but nonetheless those pillars of our community would volunteer their time and service to help make those few necessary rules and procedures and regulations that we need to manage our affairs honorably. And they were supposed to give their time and service gratefully as a way of paying back the country for the opportunity that they had. And then when they'd done their duty and been of some service for some time, then they were supposed to go back home, do their thing, retire. What we have today are professional politicians, people who educate themselves in political science or who educate themselves in the streets of political science, get bankrolled by some very big bankers, lots of big money, lots of debts to pay back in that case, and then they make careers out of so-called service. And in the process, many of them get rich, very, very rich, unspeakably rich, peddling their influence, sharing what they know, helping people get a foot in the door, because we have now allowed a structure to develop in which government controls so much and has their hand in so much that you can gain an advantage if you have the government's ear or someone in government's ear, a key senator or a key congressperson on a certain committee who can do your bidding for you. Nobody really envisioned this kind of thing. And it's only getting worse. Our character crisis has spiraled completely out of control. And where it starts is in your home and my home. That's where it starts. Each one of us has an obligation, a personal obligation. And once again, for those of you who don't know, that's why I opened and closed this program with that patriotic sounding song that my wife and I wrote. Character and freedom are completely interdependent. We'll be great as a society. Once again, America will be great. And it will be free, truly free, when we can trust one another to be people of decent character. And that's where our attention needs to be. Not on who we elect, who we think is going to give us something we want. Man, if there was any way to go that's the wrong way to go, that's the wrong way to go. Pinning our hopes on that dream is so wrong-minded, so detrimental to what will really help restore our greatness. The only thing that will restore our greatness, only thing that will make us collectively great, is when we are individually good and decent people, really good and decent people. When we cherish our significant others and our relationships, when we honor our obligations, when we do our duty without cheating and without reservation and with gratitude, both at the office, on the job, in our homes, in our relationships. It starts there. And if it isn't there, it isn't anywhere. That's what it's all about. Now, very soon, we're coming upon the season, starting with Memorial Day, when I'll get more and more requests for performances of the theme song that you hear at the open and close, Anthem for the Millennium, most often called America, My Home. And there's nothing really that gives me a greater sense of pride and hope than to know that somebody wants to carry the message in song and maybe touch somebody's heart and inspire someone to remember what it is that we have here, what a great treasure this freedom is. And to do our best to honor our best ideals. And I don't know how you feel about that, but if you want to make a comment, if you want to ask a question, if you have a criticism, a complaint, if you have a story to share, anything at all. It's open mic night tonight, so give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I did want to say a little bit about the series that's going now on the blog at manipulative-people.com. A series on cognitive behavioral therapy. You know, when I was in training many years ago, one of the reasons I chose the training program that I did was because it offered a very eclectic brand of training, and it was very heavily clinically skills oriented. These days, alternate programs other than PhD programs in psychology have sprung up. Back in the actually in the 80s and 90s, programs, specialty schools, graduate schools strictly in psychology developed, granting a different kind of degree, a PsyD, PSYD doctorate, instead of the PhD, which involved some research focus. Because doctoral level clinical psychologists were always seen, or were historically seen, as both clinicians and researchers. But because many of the programs focused perhaps a bit too heavily on research and didn't focus enough on helping folks develop clinical skills, programs began to sprout up strictly training clinicians in PsyD programs. Many of these programs are very good programs, too. But I chose the PhD program that I did because it was very heavily oriented toward clinical skills development, and also because it had a very eclectic approach to skills training. So we learned all of the major models, all the major therapeutic models. And I felt quite comfortable within any of the models. I could see very early on, long before I actually got into the field and started practicing and gathering firsthand experience, I could see that certain types of therapies were more tailor-made for certain kinds of problems. For example, individuals who truly were emotionally conflicted to the point that they had repressed many of their emotional conflicts. They had buried, basically, their pain and hurt from scars in childhood, the trauma that they'd suffered early on in their development. Many of these people were tailor-made for the programs that were designed to help make those unconscious fears and insecurities and emotional traumas more conscious and work them through, gain some insight as to how those things were affecting current behavior, gain some relief in being able to talk to somebody else about the hurt sustained, whether in childhood or some other time in the past. So these therapies were very well tailor-made. Some of them were for this kind of problem. But I also found that these therapies were not appropriate, were not helpful for individuals with character disturbance. We have a call coming in, which I'm going to take. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters. Hello? Hello? Well, I'm not sure what's happened there, but we have somebody trying to call in, and I can't patch them through for some reason. We'll try again in a minute here. Perhaps the caller can hang up and try again, and we'll try to patch you through. Sorry, the phone is not working just right. At any rate, what I learned was that certain therapies were just not appropriate for dealing with people who had what I call character disturbance. In other words, when the problem stemmed from their deficient character as opposed to some unconscious conflict. All right, we're going to try and patch this call in again. Let's see what we can do. Hello and welcome to Character Matters.
Yeah, I just tried calling here a minute ago and we didn't get through.
Oh, well, I'm glad you got through this time. I'm not sure what happened the last time, but welcome.
Okay. I listen to your stuff here every now and then. And I guess a few weeks back you were discussing some on your blog, some about gaslighting.
Yes.
I was wondering if maybe you could touch on that a little bit more.
Okay. Have you heard the term before?
Yes, I have.
And do you think you have a fair understanding of what it means?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Gaslighting, for those of the audience who may not know or may not be familiar with the term, this is a term coined based on there was a stage play and later a movie made with I think it was made in the 50s. I'm not sure, with Charles Boyer and Ingrid Bergman. Was based on the stage play called Gaslight. It was about a nefarious scoundrel husband who wanted to get rid of his wife, and how he planned to do that was to make her think she was going crazy, and that way he could put her away in an asylum and be done with her. One of the little tricks to make this woman think she was going crazy was to slowly and very subtly dim the light on a gas lamp, a gas light, and barely perceptible differences that nobody else noticed, but the woman who he was trying to make feel she was going crazy did, and began to think she was going crazy. So that's where the term comes from. But gaslighting as a tactic, as a manipulation tactic, is whereby you try to make the other person who's got an issue with you feel like a crazy person. And there are lots of ways to do it. Sometimes you can do that by feigning indignation, or by saying things with such intensity or such apparent conviction that you make the other person doubt. This is a favorite tactic of serial cheaters whose spouses begin to suspect, and then they'll bring something up that makes them suspicious that they have every right to suspect, and the person who wants to manipulate the spouse will try to make them feel crazy for suspecting. Will act outraged, or will find something that supposedly proves their innocence, or they'll perhaps maybe act in concert with some other people, try to get other people over onto their side, and gang up on the other person, make them feel crazy. Yes,
that is what happened to me. Is my I'll call her my ex-wife. Got all of our friends to believe I was crazy. Now, I believe I'm not, and I'm a successful businessman. And but the thing that's just hardest to accept is that everybody looks at me as though I'm mentally disordered. And my wife really got into the personality disorder stuff. I'd go did all the doctoring and everything like she requested. And they all come back, all their tests show negative, I guess you would say, that I'm a fairly normal person, just under a lot of stress. But I think the hardest thing has been to accept is just that all of our friends and our whole social circle has pretty much, I really don't have much trust for them, a lot of them anymore. Is that normal what happens with gaslighting? I know my wife, she did a lot, try to make me think that I was crazy. And there is a lot of substantial evidence of, well, like you said, serial cheating. And, but I'll honestly say I haven't ever had any physical evidence. Just pretty much she matches up to all the characteristics of someone who's having affairs.
Huh. Well, what you describe as far as the alienation among folks whom you once enjoyed a fair degree of trust, this is a common occurrence with gaslighting when gaslighting is present. But let me ask you a little bit more about your situation. In what ways did this person make other people think you were crazy?
Well, I think she first of all, just by me making the effort to go into counseling, she, and through her request, even though I felt our marriage actually was fairly normal, and it really was just the last 6 months that things just really fell apart, and it caused me to be on edge.
Yeah, and you said that you were under some stress. Was there something unusual going on at the time to bring on some added stress?
Not necessarily for business or anything like that, but I think the marriage itself, the relationship was falling apart, and that was causing stress. I'm not an angry person. I'm not belligerent, and she would tell everybody I did all this behind everybody's back. I'm a normal guy. I had a lot of friends. I still have a lot of friends. But she says everything was always in secret. Brad's never angry or bitter or bullies in public. It's always in secret. And I'm just like, I just try to think, when did I ever do that? And she had me convinced to the point where I believe, well, maybe I really did do that stuff, but I still sit back and I go like, no, I'm not that way. I am. My voice is just naturally kind of loud, and I know that. And I work in a career that it requires that I do need to have a loud voice, and for the type of people and stuff that I work with, and so I don't know. It's just I was listening a little bit tonight, and I got to remembering about that gaslighting, and I mean, this went on. This happened over 3 years ago, and my wife and I have not said a word to each other. And I just go on living my life. Hopefully, my example will show to people that it wasn't him.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, how long does it take for that to come out?
Well, you can't control the other end of a relationship, nor can you control what the other person does. The only thing you can control is your own behavior, and and in time, people who really truly do know you will judge you on the merits of your behavior. So you just need to stay true to yourself. Many times when gaslighting is involved, there's always a kernel of truth involved in the things that the gaslighter uses to character assassinate. In other words, there's always some measure of truth in what they say. They've just blown it out of proportion in an effort to besmirch somebody's character and also to make the other person doubt and feel a bit crazy. Well,
I've never felt crazy. I've just always kind of felt like, I don't think I've ever really felt crazy. I just felt, distressed, like, why would they be like this? We had a good family. And one of the other hard things, too, is my kids really have little or no contact with me. And
why is that?
Because they live with her. And, when I left home, I left home to keep the peace. and so the kids could keep their home.
Yeah. Well,
And
now
I think,
remember where you have power. And I speak to this in both my books, and this is so important. You have power, unlimited power, when it comes to your behavior. You can't control
hmm
the outcomes of things. You can't control
hmm
her. You can't control the children's response to you, but you always can
hmm
ma- make the right efforts on your own. So you're
hmm
still empowered to reach out, to make those
and I do. Yeah,
connections, to be the
I do.
kind of person that you've always wanted to be to your children. And in time, if you're that person and you relate to them in the best manner that you can, in time, they will know you, they will know your character, they will come to appreciate that, and they will come to have the kind of relationship that you want to have. So you have something to say about that. And unfortunately, what happens is in these situations is many times we start to focus on what we can't control, namely the other
hmm
person, what they've done to us, how difficult they're making it as far as access goes and all that stuff. And we get all focused on that. That angers us, it depresses us, and it gets us all off kilter emotionally, and we lose sight of where we do have power and where we do control. You have an awful lot of control when it comes to how you relate. So
Why
you're
do they do that? Why do they want to take control like that?
well,
Um,
see,
Not my children, but my ex-wife. Why do they do
see,
that?
this is what I'm advising you exactly not to do. This is what I'm advising you. I'm telling you, don't go there. Don't even go there mentally. Don't even muse on such things because it's unempowering. It's disempowering. And it's only gonna spark more frustration and anger and perhaps even some bitterness. But most important, it's going to dampen your energy and weaken your power. Where you have power is over what you do. So
hmm
don't go there, don't speculate, don't waste any time trying to figure it out. You have an obligation to control your end of the relationship with your children. You're going to be their father forever,
hmm
right?
Well, right now I don't feel like I'm much of a father because, well, I don't have much of a relationship with them,
Well, that
and they're
you
growing
have
up without a
you
father, and that's been. We had a very close family prior to this all falling apart, and I mean we were close. My son and I, and my daughter and I, very close, good
you
friends.
still have a lot of power there. All you have to do is
hmm
focus on what you want to do with regard to nurturing those relationships, and don't pay attention to and do your best to bear with any of the obstacles thrown in your way. Don't focus on them. Don't react to them. Don't let them get you down. Your
hmm
empowerment will be in focusing on what you can do to nurture those relationships. That's where your power is going to be. And ultimately, your kids will respect that. And they will remember that. They'll remember you as a stand up guy. They'll respect you as a stand up guy for doing
hmm
what you needed to do to nurture that relationship despite all of the other things that have happened.
hmm hmm
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, indeed it does. And I give a lot of thought to that. The one thing, my ex and I were still, involved in our church and stuff, and that makes difficulty there as well. And and it's just, I just kind of like that gaslighting thing because it does, the things she has said. In fact, she's almost gaslighting other people. I kind of look at it in trying to encourage them to think the way she thinks,
Yeah.
encouraging others to think about me the same way she thinks about me.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to give you one other suggestion that I advocate highly in my books.
okay,
When you do focus on what you can do, and when you deliberately tune out all that stuff you can't control, like how she responds, like how difficult she makes it, like the times the kids don't respond like you'd like them to. Once you tune all of that out, let all of that go, and you focus exclusively on your efforts to nurture a relationship, I want you to do one thing reliably, and that is to give yourself credit, give yourself an internal pat on the back for staying focused on what you can do and for stepping up to the plate and doing what you need to do to nurture those relationships despite how difficult it might be. In other words, you're going to be tested. Your character is going to be tested.
Oh, trust me, it has been. Yes, it has. And I like to think that I have stood up for my self-respect very well. I really do. And I know that sounds probably a bit arrogant, but I work in a business that requires a very high element of character. And I believe I have stepped up to the plate. And just, kind of curious to, about how long it takes for things to heal, and things have settled down. I mean, we weren't fighting or anything. It just
don't go there. Don't go there. Don't muse on the things. I mean, it sounds like trite advice. Believe me, what I'm giving you here is really empowering. Don't waste a single minute. Don't waste a single mental minute worrying about, thinking about, pondering about anything you can't control anyway. Don't worry about how much time it will take. Don't worry about what they might do. Don't even go there. Just focus on what your agenda is. And that agenda is, right now, you've got to be a parent to these children still for the rest of your life and their life that you have them. That's your obligation. You focus there, nobody can stop you. Nobody can stop you from doing that. Let go of the outcomes. Let go of their responses. Let go of how difficult your ex might make it for you. Let go of the image that's been trashed. Let go of everything. Let go of how long it will take to heal. Let it all go. Focus where you need to focus and watch the energy come back. Watch the sense of power and vitality and joy return to your life. I promise you. No, it sounds trite, but I'm telling you it's powerful.
Yeah, it's probably the same advice I would give someone who was talking to me, but sometimes we need to hear it from others for ourselves, too.
Yeah.
I have done things that, are of my own choosing. I mean, things that help me to be a better person and, quiet myself a lot. But I just, I listen to your program every now and then. I thought, well, let's call in tonight.
Well, I'm glad you did. I appreciate the call, and I know that there are probably some other people who got benefit from it too as well. So thanks for calling in.
Hopefully. You bet. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, we're getting close to the end of the hour. I once again invite you to make yourselves available of my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, The Judas Syndrome, and my blog articles on www.counselingwith2lsresource.com and www.manipulative-people.com, where I've got an excellent series of articles running right now on cognitive behavioral therapy, the treatment of choice for individuals of impaired character and also individuals who are recovering from relationships with impaired characters. So make yourself available, make those available to you by visiting the sites, and tune in again next week for another edition of Character Matters. I appreciate you tuning in tonight. See you next week.